So thanks for having me here. Happy to come from Israel to share some thoughts with you, and I'll try to keep this brief so we can have a discussion. Intuition Robotics is a company that's less than 2 years old. Venture-backed startup, as many of them exist in Israel. And basically our goal is to use the latest technology that's out there in order to help older adults overcome the digital divide and keep active and engaged in the next chapter of their lives. And you'll see why this is important as we go through this. But also it's important to mention that we've also seen that there are no positive brands for aging. Right? We have aspirational brands when we're kids, and when we're teens, and when we're tweens, and when we are young professionals, and when we're parents, and then there are walkers and alert buttons and adult diapers, right? So part of our success or failure is going to be, will we be able to create an aspirational brand that tries to cater to the needs and to the wishes and to improving the quality of life of older adults, and not just dealing with the negative aspects or the disabilities and issues that follow. So let's see a quick video that will help us kind of be in the same state of mind, and then we'll talk about it.
Mary, Megan sent a new photo. Would you like to look at it?
Yes, please. Oh, he's a gem.
Would you like to respond to Megan's post?
Sure.
Recording in 3, 2, 1.
LEQ reminds me to take my meds, arranges rides for me. She even reminds me of all my appointments.
Mary, don't forget bridge with the Golden Girls at 1 p.m. Would you like to practice?
Oh, I don't need to practice.
I didn't catch that. Do you want to play bridge or not?
Oh, fine. Let's play.
Mary, you wanted to Skype with Liz. Would you like to do that now?
Oh, sure, that sounds great. Hey, honey.
Hi, Mom.
Hey, I just noticed, is it a little cool in the house?
Oh, it feels great. I'm doing my Tai Chi now.
Yeah, I can see.
Okay, Mom. Just checking in. You take care.
I'm fine, sweetie. Chat later.
There's a new TED Talk waiting for you if you'd like to watch it. Or perhaps you could go for a walk.
That's a good idea, LEQ.
Great, Mary. I'll be right here when you get back.
Great.
Expecting to see when you heard the word robot, right? I'll skip a little bit about the statistics because John did a much better job than I could ever do talking about this. Of course, one thing to point out that we didn't discuss earlier is the growing distance between our parents and us. We move around for work. We're working 24/7. I feel like I take more time, or it's a harder job taking care of my kids than it was for my parents taking care of me. I don't know if it's objective or not, but we're busy all the time, and our smartphones are getting us to work 24/7, so something in a dynamic changed, and we no longer move into our children's home to retire. We're kind of shooed away to a retirement community more often than not. Now, some interesting statistics, more psychological than demographic. Older adults prefer to age in their own home. That's actually a good thing. But look at these statistics. About half self-proclaim that they feel lonely. Depending on the statistic you see, it's between 40 to 60%. And of course, the number is usually higher than what people freely admit. The last two numbers on the first part are from the UK. About half see the TV as their main companion. And above 35% talk to one living person or less a week. This is where we are, right? It's where we are. And that's why you see people calling into call centers and going into grocery stores and buying a single cucumber, et cetera, et cetera. There are also studies that are showing that this loneliness and social isolation now has direct causality, proven by the CDC and others, the Center of Disease Control in the United States, for increased depression, dementia, and even mortality. But not all is lost. When people practice active aging, when they're a little bit more active and engaged, and they learn something new every day, and they have a purpose in their lives, they actually push out the risk of dementia and Alzheimer's by 47%, which has, by the way, a huge GDP cost to the countries when you look at the amount of aging population. They recover faster from illness and disease, but more importantly, at least to me, they're happier, and there's a lot less stress on their caregivers, mainly their adult children. So the real question for us at Intuition Robotics is, how do you get more people into this category? Well, for that, you need to understand the root cause. There are a few things we can't change as a small startup out of Israel. We can't get people to live closer to their parents. We can't get them to work less hours, and we can't get them to have their parents move in with them when they get old. We can try. I don't think we'll succeed. There are two things we did identify that we can work on. The first is the digital divide. We can learn anything when we're older, but it takes us a lot more time and a lot more effort. So our ability to learn new things declines. This is not a one-time thing of the digital generation versus the analog generation. Our ability to learn new things declines. And the amount of change around us is not declining at the same speed. In fact, it's not even flat, it's actually accelerating. So you have an ever-growing gap between our ability to learn new tools and new skills and use technology, which is more and more all around us, and the need to do so to be a functioning member of society. The second is about routine. So as we become older, we tend to stick to a repetitive routine, and it's harder and harder for people to initiate change. However, we discovered, and there are many studies to that effect, that show that if somebody suggests an activity at the right time, which is highly personalized, the conversion rate, if you will, borrowed from advertising, is very, very high. So somehow we need to be able to break that repetitive routine and suggest activities. And that's basically where the main principles we had in Intuition Robotics. The first is to make it super natural and easy to reap the benefits of technology without needing to master the tools on how to use technology. So whether it's video conferencing or anything else, what you really want is to extract the value, and you don't care if you used Uber or called a taxi. We had to make a robot that's proactive and not reactive, meaning if any of you have ever used Alexa or Siri or Google Home or one of those other ones, these are all reactive products. You say, hey Alexa, play me some Beatles, and then it will react and give you a very immediate transaction right away. We found out we actually have to initiate a discussion and say, hey Chris, how about we listen to the Beatles together? To do that effectively, we need to understand what's going on in the room. We need to understand if Chris is there. We need to understand who else is in the room. We need to understand, is this a good time to interrupt him? Maybe he's watching his best show. Maybe he's in an interesting discussion with all of these people here. It would be kind of inappropriate for LEQ to interrupt and suggest for him to listen to music. And we need to understand what type of music he likes and how to best frame that question. Maybe with some humor, maybe more of a butler style, maybe more aggressive, and say, hey Chris, you've been sitting all day, why don't you go for a walk, right? And that's very, very dependent because we're all different. We can't have a one solution that fits all. And the last thing we found out is that we have to build a product only for older adults. Investors hate that. We had 82 investors say no before we found investors that said yes. And you know Einstein's definition of insanity is repeating the same exact thing and expecting a different result. So we were borderline there for a while. Because investors tell you it's too risky. Nobody's ever made money selling technology to older adults. In fact, nobody's made money selling anything to older adults that's not geriatric. So why don't you build a generic product? And if older adults like it, it will skew into that direction. But we found that in order to do this properly, we have to do a lot of primary research with hundreds of older adults and their families to see how they approach technology, how they use technology, et cetera. And very few companies are doing that. I do hope that that trend will change because these products and most applications you use were designed for a 24 to 35 consumer in mind. And that's why they look the way they look, and that's perfect. But there are other demographics. By the way, older adults have 70% or 50 plus have 70% of the world's disposable income in their hands. So it might make good business sense to do that as well. So anyway, so that led us to this beautiful, we think beautiful product that we collaborated with Yves Bahar, a very famous designer, to create this unintrusive assistant, if you will, that doesn't look like a robot at all, can sense you, is proactive, learns all the time, personalizes its personality towards you. So I might have a funny robot and you might have an aggressive robot. And of course also has a lot of sensing capability to understand what's happening at home. Although we take a really strong point on caring for the privacy and the dignity of the older adult. So even if we might see things at home, if the older adult didn't explicitly ask us to share it and with who, we won't ever do that. And what is all of this good for? We basically do 4 buckets of things. We were searching for one killer app. It's another thing investors always say, do just one thing. We found that in order to really help people, you have to have multiple touch points throughout the day and really become part of the family, if you will. So basically, we help with communications, with video chats and messaging. Grandkids don't want to video chat with their grandma, and they don't want to call her on the phone either. Might be sad, but they don't want to do that. The phone conversations, I see it with my daughters and my parents, are short, they're full of silences, they're not natural. What my daughters love to do is send them selfies. And my youngest one, emojis, but that will pass, I hope, very soon. And we enable those type of things. The other is around engagement, which is all about learning new things and leveraging the benefits of the internet content in a way that's very easy to enjoy, whether it's music or learning new things every day. So we call podcasts and TED Talks lectures. And we make recommendations there. We have a content team that recommends specific content so you don't have to have a hard time finding it. Assistant is about giving tools for the older adult to stay independent longer in their own home, whether it's working with companies like Uber and Lyft for ride sharing or medication reminders that are super important and other things that you can imagine, and then wellness monitoring. So those are the 4 things we touch. And what we discovered is that in order to do this effectively, and again, we're still a young company, there has to be a few different stakeholders that need to be involved. The family is super important. The local community is super important if you want somebody to get out of their home and whether it's rejoin the workforce or whether it's go to an interesting lecture. And then, of course, be applicable and palatable to the older adult themselves. So that's it. Those are my prepared remarks. I'm happy to take any questions.